What drink would Restless be if it was a drink?
Oh, probably absinthe. The law is like a bizarre fever dream.
What drink would you be?
Earl Grey tea. It's like quite comforting, but slightly odd.
What are the red winter essentials?
Oh, rat winter. I'm already dressed in flannels. That's definitely up there. A beanie, like not a cool one, a really old one. Something that you've just kept since you were a teenager, but that's ironically cool now. Doc Martens and Stonewash boyfriend jean. Really just a grunge aesthetic. I'm in rat winter all seasons.
What was like the peak of your Tumblr girl era?
I can't say that my aesthetic has evolved that much since I was like 12, 13. But initially, my first experiment was dyeing the ends of my hair pink. I went into school with it and they made me cut it off. I got my first tattoo when I was 14, like trying to push the headmistress to the point of how many tattoos do I have? Not that many, given that I started really young, just 3. I didn't get another one for 20 years. So at that point, I was sailing from the UK to New Zealand with my parents, and we were in these islands in the Pacific called the Marquesas, which is where a lot of tattoo art originated. It was a symbol for a tuna, the only fish that we caught.
Talking about sailing around the world, do you think this benefited your upbringing or did it disrupt your stability as a child?
It definitely benefited. Got to meet so many interesting people just because of the nature of the type of people who are traveling, because everybody sails with the winds. You end up sailing around the world with the same group of people. I learned how to be in the world, and I learned about who I was a lot more effectively than I could have done at school. It was very weird. Then we moved to New Zealand after that. Very difficult transition. I'd say that side of it was a little bit more detrimental.
If you could do it again, was there a place you would spend more time in?
One of my favorite places was Ecuador, and we ended up traveling around for maybe 3 weeks. It would be amazing to explore more of the Andes, go back to the Galapagos Islands.
How would you describe a day in life of an anti-establishment samurai warrior?
Wow, that is some retro bios that you've been discovering there. It was in reference to my approach to existing in the fashion industry, which is pretty much just like being at war every day in this very hostile environment. I want to do what I could to like make my little bit of structural change from the inside.
You still have your fashion brand, and then you have a digital fashion platform. Did it change the attitude that you had?
I started out when I was 15, fairly naively, with my first brand. I wasn't really in industry circles until I started my fashion degree in London. By the time I'd finished, I was extremely jaded, but I also felt like it's important to have people who are discontent with an industry in an industry. Otherwise, none of the bad stuff changes.
Would you say that virtual models like are beneficial for the fashion world?
I feel like when we were doing that as more of a small internal experiment, I wanted to just explore how you would create campaigns and shoots without having to get anybody to a location. Since then, there's been a huge rise of virtual influencers. There are definitely ethical challenges around what is popular in terms of a body shape and ethnicity, all of that stuff that goes into like trying to construct the most viral virtual influencer exacerbates problems that the fashion industry already has.
Yeah, it's also who runs them and stuff like that. When all the female fashion influencers or like just general influencers on social media run by men,
you're not getting anything at face value. Authenticity is missing, although so many of these influencers get a really authentic response. It's deceptive.
If I wanted to take them out on a date, what do you think I could impress them with?
Choco Choco is very kind of Tokyo vibes. If you could combine like a speakeasy with a coffee shop, a hidden hole in the wall where you can get really good espresso.
12-hour screen time, red flag or green flag?
I would say beige flag, because it's not that weird, right? But it's not a green flag.
Depends like where I count my screen time.
I'm a workaholic, so maybe it is a red flag, but then I'm definitely that red flag.
Doesn't travel without the Dyson air cleaner.
Red flag. There's a bit of a lack of spontaneity there, isn't there?
Person that doesn't buy NFTs from established fashion brands.
At this time in 2024, it probably leans more green flag. For me personally, it wouldn't be a red flag to me if somebody didn't. Yeah, that's a tough one. Can we put that one as a beige flag as well?
Kiss, marry, kill. First date insists on a ceramic cup in a takeout coffee shop for environmental reasons. Second date takes their best friend, which is a mare bear, with them. And the third date says, you know my swag, but you don't know my story.
Third date's the kill. Kiss ceramic guy and marry mare bear guy.
What is the best, the last, and the cringiest date that you had?
I have never been on a date. I have been in serial monogamous relationships that have formed from friendships. So like never been on a date, never been on a dating app.
What about the hanging out? Like I call hanging out a date as well.
I genuinely can't think of any cringe ones. If there were, I've obviously blocked them really hard from my memory.
Well, it actually says about the choices that you make. Like you're not going with the person who will be.
I've definitely solved some problems by only being in relationships relationships with people with whom I was friends first.
What is a bedroom essential for a happy marriage?
We are talking about sex, right? Or just like furniture.
Whatever you want.
Probably not red painted walls. We'll answer both halves of that question with one thing: a firm mattress.
That's a good answer.
And also to have a drink in bed and it will not spill.
Very practical.
Okay, how does being the Ray Donovan of the metaverse align with your punk image? Would you consider yourself
I consider myself a punk image. In some ways, maybe, but I live in the British countryside drinking a big cup of tea right now. It's quite wholesome, really. It was just something that I was called by a friend in, I think it was 2022, as fashion brands and retailers were starting to get into web3. A whole number of brands had like major issues with who they'd partnered with to get them into NFTs or digital land or whatever. And then they'd come to me to try and fix it. And thus the Ray Donovan moniker stuck.
What would make you turn down a partnership with a major fashion brand?
Honestly, I hate working with other fashion brands or bigger traditional fashion brands. They tend to be the most difficult partners in terms of what they want versus what will resonate with a crypto native audience. So it will take quite a lot for me to agree to partner with a fashion brand. There has to be an openness to letting go of some control for it to work.
Talking about like digital fashion brands and them changing and redefining the future of fashion, do you think that it's really possible?
Definitely believe digital fashion is really important because we spend most of our time socializing, constructing our identity online. There's like a generation of kids, they just hang out in Roblox all evening after school and they have created the character that they most identify with.
But who is going to be run by? It will be possible for companies that come from Web3 space with a little bit different values when it comes to the ownership to overtake the values of the more established ones that are, they're already actually in the digital platforms and creating the collections and stuff. So who will dominate?
There are going to be certain names that matter more. I don't think there's a reason that a brand built natively in Web3 has less of a shot at that than an incumbent brand coming in. In the last cycle, it was cringe when a big brand came in, rather than it being like a massive flex to buy their NFT. If anything, I think independents have a better shot there. Authenticity does really matter to the generation that digital fashion is going to matter most to. That willingness to allow the community to co-design in some way is going to come from an independent Web3 native fashion brand.
Do you think virtual reality fashion industry is gonna boom before the virtual reality porn industry?
No. The people that can initially afford the hardware for good quality virtual reality are going to be more interested in the porn.
What does failure mean to you?
I mean, this sounds like some kind of Instagram sunset quote. Failure would really be just stopping, trying, giving up. And I don't think it's a failure to give up because genuinely it's the right time to let something go. But giving up because something is hard.
What drives you?
Wanting to make a change, wanting to leave a legacy of change in the systems that I really disagree with. My focus right now is ability for any type of creator to be able to build their own career without being dependent on the whims of a very antiquated industry.
What movies make you sad?
Anything where animals die. I can deal with literally anything else, but if there's a dog that dies at the end, that's going to sit with me for days.
What makes you happy?
In like movies or just life? Animals actually up there. Spending more time in nature, less time around people. I don't mean like completely isolating myself from society, but it is great to just be like by myself or with my dog in the woods. I moved out of London to the countryside at the beginning of this year and it was a really good move for my happiness.
Who do you nominate to join us next?
I think Ted would be really interesting to hear spicy takes.